Hello and welcome to 301. We made it. I feel like I need like a drum roll or at least like a little side music coming in. So make sure you tell me hello and that you're on here and that you guys can hear me. That'll be great. And then we will get started shortly. All right. Oh, I'm seeing familiar names. Awesome. I'm so glad for you guys to come back. I hope you guys have enjoyed the series so far, and I hope that everything has been enlightening because I'm starting to get a little bit more into these, and you guys have had some great questions even after. And I have helped a few of you. I've even jumped on a few of your Domot's actual installations and helped you out there, and that's very appreciative. I love doing that. I love being able to talk with you guys and get you guys everything that you need. All right, so let's kind of dive in, shall we? Again, as you know, I'm Destiny Bertucci. If you don't know me, I've been in this atmosphere for about 22 plus years. That is correct. I love technology in general. I'm constantly in school. I am constantly doing things to try to better understand solutions of which that you can do, that you might need, as well as a lot of the problem sets of which that are there. I don't have the flu this week, so that's even more exciting. So this way we can actually see some of my stuff of which that I've had that bring a little bit more of that energy of which that you guys said that you couldn't believe I still had more of. All right. So on the agenda, let's go ahead and get this party started. I'm going to recap a little bit like we did the last time on the foundations. We're going to go into why advanced monitoring matters, and then we're going to get into the smarter alerting and escalation policies. What are parent-child relationships and some event correlations, and how can you use that in a monitoring tool? And then as well as some automation through integrations, and then best practices to scale monitoring and maturity. And then we, of course, as always, my favorite part is the Q&A section, because I feel like that's when we really get the vibe and kind of understand what's going on. So and then kind of meet you where you're at, right? Like that's what I like to do. I want to make sure that I'm there for you guys as best as I possibly can. All right, so a little bit of a recap. Jace has already put it in there as well. We have a new page of which that's going to be available that he has for the series that he's put in there. It'll give you links to the 101, 201, as well as my blog, kind of my recap of what we kind of discussed and how things were going, as well as some of the questions. I kind of like articulate those back that are there. So just to kind of quickly review on those, it was smarter dashboards and KPIs, know what they are so that you can adjust to them, make sure that you're quantifying as well as qualitatively doing those. Threshold tuning as well as meaningful alerts. If you're getting an alert and you can't do anything about it, why do you have the alert? Let's talk about that. Let's get the distractions out of the way. And then also device profiles for common equipment. Like what are some of the verticals when you're looking at some of your MSPs? Like what are some of the things that you see? Are they a Cisco shop? Are there things that I need to monitor? You can learn so much from looking at your MSPs or your clients as an MSP if they're in different sectors, such as healthcare, financial. If you're in retail, things like that, you're able to look at them holistically and compare so that you can be a better proactive monitor, as well as if you're implementing their environments, understanding problems and kind of looking across them as a whole. Very, very important to be able to have those processes and those procedures, because you can learn from your clients, right? And then you can implement that into your monitoring to help so that your other ones that are in the same vertical or same type of environments don't run into the same issues. And then structuring monitor for multiple orgs and clients, like get those collectors out there. This is client A, B, C, D, however you're wanting to do that. Your collectors are able to go out there as much as they need to so that you can actually span across that. And if you are paying attention in the managed side, if you are a managed device user, if you're buying your managed devices, they go across all collectors. It's not just per collector. So really be able to use those out there so that you can segment and actually use some of those things to your advantage. And one of the key takeaways is, get consistent, get structured, get some noise-free monitoring in place. One of the things that I had heard was they were like, my technicians aren't using the tools that we have. They have multiple tools that are doing kind of the same thing, right? And so it's like, well, let's discuss why. And I was like, can we just look at how many alerts are you getting and in what channels? So they have Slack channels that, guess what? They were there. They had like 200 and some of them that were lit up, hasn't been looked at. They had emails that went to a folder. right? That went there. So their actual critical alerts were in a folder in a channel that's not being monitored by anyone. There's nobody of which that was going there. It was kind of like, no, I'm just going to firefight it. I'm going to figure out the problem. I don't know how to use this tool to my advantage. Get the noise out of your way. That's the only way that you're going to be able to be ingrained in the product, understand what you're doing, and whatever product you're using, right? Like you have to be able to understand when I get something, it's an actionable alert. It is something that I need to have. I need to have those channels to be clear from noise. Now you're going to have informational alerts like a new device alert or things like that. Now, depending on what type of an MSP or MSSP you are, maybe you're very concerned about something new being on there, of which that you need to have that as a critical alert. Or maybe you're an MSP that needs to be aware of that so that you can start understanding if something needs to be billed or not. That is when you need to have that as its own channel that goes to the right person in billing, maybe, or do something that comes across there, not to a tech. So these are some of the things that we kind of discussed over the 201. All right, so why does advanced monitoring matter? And you guys can always constantly put in the chat why you think some of this stuff is there, or give your own use cases, because that helps everyone involved. So why does advanced monitoring matter? Well, reactive IT, right? Problems detected after impact, not really great, right? Proactive IT, that helps you get the issues identified before a failure. Automated IT, that's self-healing, right? Like those are things that we can do. If there is a problem, can I restart a service? Can I script something that's going to come across there? Is there something that I can use with one of my integrations with ConnectWise to take it further to where it needs to go? These are the things that we do for automated that actually kind of allows you to have your NMS work for you as an actual employee. This is some of the things that we're going to be diving into. So when we don't have things of automation that kind of automate some of these things up, then you get alert fatigue. And that's something that from 201 that I heard a lot from everybody from LinkedIn and emails. They're just the noise, right? Like I was just kind of discussing there. There's a lot of alert fatigue. And when there's too many noises of which that are around you, you get distracted. And you might miss problems of which that, could have been alerted to ahead of time. And I think that's something that's very valid. I've been in this space, like I said, for 22 years. That has always been the number one thing that people bring up. They're like, it's alert fatigue. Seriously, ever since like 2006, it's the same conversation, which tells me we're not in our NMS tools, right? We're not in there. We're not massaging the data. We're not understanding the data. We're not actually paying attention to what alerts are there. Some people just leave out of the box alerts on. That 80/90 that you heard me talk about, that's not helping you. You have to be able to fix some of these things and be able to actually adjust it. You get missed SLA impacts. That's serious, right? Especially if I'm an MSP. If I'm an internal IT, like I'm missing bonuses. Like these are things that I need to be aware of. What am I contracted to provide? How can I prove it? If I have a whole bunch of downtime of which is coming across here and I'm promising a 97%, a 98%, however you have your contract set up, or my boss expects me to make sure the Teams is up like 100% of the time, or any of these things, I have to be able to prove that, but more importantly, I have to prevent an outage that's coming across there. And if I'm not doing some of these things or in my NMS, I'm going to miss these SLAs. That can be a miss client. That could be a bad conversation. That could be me missing a bonus. That could be me not having a full respect for my job and putting somebody in there which that would be able to provide those services. And then you have your slow MTTR. I always like to say mean time to innocence too. It like counts, but it's like you're increasing cost, right? Like you're always, when you're increasing cost, when you're not able to figure things out, and you're not able to find that needle in a haystack, that's time wasted. And then manual processes create bottlenecks. Absolutely. If I am firefighting, I'm not going to remember everything of which that I did that may have solved that. I may have introduced a vulnerability as we discussed in 201 too. If I am literally on the running config and I am making adjustments and doing things on the fly and watching my network come back online and I fix the issue and I know what's going across there and I simply didn't save it to my startup. And then 3 months later, a month later, we get a reboot of an iOS. Not fun, right? Because it's going to revert. Do I remember what I did to solve the problem? Right? And so that's something that actually goes across there. So that's something that actually happens, right? So these are things that we have to do. And then with automation, it's how do we correlate the events to actually reduce the noise? And then how do we actually proactively fix and prevent outages that's going to come across there? What is my business continuity maintained? And how do I do some strategic IT enablement? That is a key because when we do some strategic IT enablement, that is how you stay on top of it. That's how you are proactive. This is how you're going to be able to have better business practices. So let's kind of talk about some of those. So some of the advanced monitoring, we're going to talk about like from a diagnostics tool into a strategic business enabler, because how you're going to be able to maintain your networks and how you're going to be able to stay ahead of those is through strategy, understanding the tool, understanding how you can actually implement tools that work for you. So smarter alerting and escalation policies. Do you have a policy? Somebody can put that in actually into the chat and come across there. How do we have policies if something goes wrong? Are you using it because of the tool, or are you using it because of how a network is designed? Are you doing it as both? Because it's totally, you can use them together. So alert flapping, for instance, like, pay attention to your suppressions. One of the things that I have is, an up down alert. Somebody will be like, oh, it's flapping. It's going up, it's going down. Maybe there's something wrong on the ICMP path. Maybe there's something in which that's preventing me. Maybe it's from where the collector has a different reroute. But if I'm getting this that's coming across here and it's a hit or miss, that's not very helpful and that creates noise, right? So look at your triggers and then look at like, how do I reset that alert? I want to make sure it goes with my policies, right? So if this thing has been down for X amount of time and comes back up within 5 minutes, I don't want to reset that alert yet. If it comes back up or down and it's actually been longer than the 5 minutes and it stayed up for 5 minutes, that's when I want to know that it's reset. Or maybe it's 10 minutes, depending on what you're doing. A perfect example that I've seen that some people have used is BGP protocols and the flapping neighbors, right? Like when you have things that go up, down, up, down, up, down. They only want to know if that has happened, if it's happened 5 times within X amount of time, right? So if it is flapped 5 times in 5 minutes, then I want to be alert. But if it's only done at 3 within 5, it's all right. It's doing what's supposed to do. I need to move on. Think of your alerts this way. What protocols are you using? How much are you doing? What are we actually coming across, right? So this is how we kind of look at those. You want trigger delays. Like maybe you want to actually look at how you're setting up your alerts and say, you know what? I don't want to know about this bandwidth issue. Like bandwidth has been here for X amount of time and it's at 90%, but I need it to stay there for 5 minutes before you actually alert me or warn me that something's happening. Can anybody tell me why you would want to do that? Because you might have a burst, right? And we've all had bursts on interfaces of which that can come across there and it's going to spike. And if we catch that spike on an SNMP, that's not necessarily a problem if it reverted, right? So these are some of the things that you need to know. And then you have rolling data SNMP, which also means that when you have rolling data SNMP, know what those values are. If they only update their actual SNMP criteria every 5 minutes, I don't need to pull that interface every minute and a half, right? Or 2 minutes, because we know it's not going to change. Most people will change it to 3 minutes, right? That puts a little bit less wear and tear on your resources from anything. That also allows you to get accurate data so that you're not skewing the number that comes across there. So when we do smart escalation chains, what some of the things that I like to do is, who are you notifying within your alerts? Can they make a difference, right? When you do, like with us, if you're doing integrations with ConnectWise or things like that, or Freshdesk, things like that that are coming out there, some of the things that you can do is escalate those to the right people. So if I know that I'm tier based, I need to make sure what type of an alert can be solved by who. So I'm not wasting time otherwhere and in another place. I'm able to do a report across that as well and say, you know what? This is a problem over here. Maybe I need to have a discussion about this device with that client. Maybe I need to have a discussion internally with my boss. I'm noticing a pattern here of something that's coming across. And if we can repeat it, right, like we want to get rid of it because we know that there's a problem which is coming across there. I want to make sure that also, if I am an MSP or even an internal IT, some of the best things that I like to do is say, hey, I have an alert that's going to go out to the technician that's going to happen. I can then take it a step further. Like if I'm using ConnectWise or doing some of those and say, hey, guess what? I am now going to send an email to the people that are relying on this and let them know that I'm on it, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can use these tools to communicate for you to make sure that you have smart escalations and that things are happening, right? And then like if you can get even further advanced into it, that if, after 30 minutes or after an hour or things like that, and it's still not resolved, then you can send out another one to kick it up to another tier or bring other people into the situation. So you're constantly moving the workflow so that it's coming around. And that's something that I think we all need to think about. How is the workflow complete? How do I actually, prevent it later once we already know it's happened? How do I massage the data? How do I actually get into the data so that I can actually make sure that the workflow is continually progress? But it's also doing things that I normally would have to do personally, or pick up the phone and be like, hey, did you know this is down? And it's like, yes, we're on it. Well, that you should know that, right? Like if you have the technicians in place, go ahead and let them know that ahead of time. We're on it. We're doing that. That makes them feel secure. That makes your boss, makes the teams, like if I have different teams and a switch that went down and it affected cells, I can already let them know through the alert. Hey, we're on it. We know something is happening here. We'll get back to you as soon as we can get this resolved. And then you can also, like, more advanced, get your resets too, to be like all clear, everything's good, because we use the triggers, right? And the ways that we can actually do that for a delay to make sure that it is stable before we send those out. And then you have align thresholds. So there's different kinds, right? And that's something that I think that a lot of people don't know about or don't put together, is that you have business driven criteria and as well as performance baselines, right? So business driven is SLAs, right? What am I responsible for? Also your reputation, right? And I think that's something that we need to think about, especially in the cyber land of things that comes across there, right? So when we have a reputation as an MSP, you want the tools to be working for you in a very polished way, right? I want to have my business driven criteria met, not only through proactivity, but awareness, but also an understanding of the environment. So my communication pathways need to be aligned with my SLAs. I need to be making sure that I'm actually looking at my information correctly, right? So those are some of the things that I'm doing. And I'm trying to fix my video real quick. But but also you have performance based, right? So I think that's something that's very encouraging as well, is that when we do a performance based, that is always going to be your actual statistics that you're gathering from SNMP, that's going to be your stuff from ICMP, that's going to be API calls, things like that. Anything that you can get a metric off of, that's what you're wanting to provide. Let's see if I can get this one to go across. There we go. Might be back on. All right, you guys can give me a thumbs up if you guys can see me again. That's coming in there. So when we're doing performance baselines, this goes back to kind of like the 201 as well. If I don't know how a device works correctly, what is correct, what makes it a good device, then I'm not able to actually know if there's an anomaly or if there is a pattern or if there's something that's coming that's maybe coming, right? Like that, to bring something down. So baselines of understanding your statistics and how to gather those. From 101, as we've talked about, your SNMP, that's bare minimum, that how people start to go out there to get those health statistics. So it gives your body your vitals, right? What is my baseline? How am I healthy? What am I doing? And then 201, it's like, I'm not healthy. Something's wrong. How do I alert correctly? What can I do to this? So these are some of those aligning things. And then on here, it's like, what are my goals for this? What am I promising my clients? What am I promising within my internal IT? How am I actually meeting these goals? Am I meeting these goals? Do I have the right people in place if something goes wrong? You can use all of this data to be able to do that. And so when you have intelligent alerting set up, this is like a statistic across the board. False positive, you reduce them by 70%. And that's because it enables you to faster resolution, and you're not missing those critical incidents that impact, right? And I think that's where we get lost in the noise. We get lost in, I know people who have set up their actual monitoring systems and turn off all the alerts because they're like, I have a dashboard, I can just see if it's up or down, and then they regret it instantly because maybe even if they have cyber insurance or they have something they have to prove case, they don't have the history, right? They don't have the acknowledgement, they don't even have anything in which that can match what they say that they're providing, right? And so these are things that we need to just kind of look at and just kind of be mindful of. So when we talk about parent-child relationships, which also flows into event correlation, right? So, when you have distributed switches, when you have endpoints, when you have your router, and we think of the topology of which it's coming down, right? We need to be able to actually establish an order of, hey, if this goes down, I know these are behind me, right? There's plenty of tools that allow you to do this. So if you're using one of our integrations, like with ConnectWise or Freshdesk or any of the things of which that comes across there, you are able to set that up, send the alert to them, and then automatically group the nodes of which that are underneath them so that you don't get all of those alerts, right? That's something that you have to massage and to be able to be within there. Also know what your critical services are. If something goes down, is there a server back here that's for a database for your financial team? Know this. When you're doing your topology and when you're doing your setup, you need to be able to actually monitor this and know what is connected, what is actually established on the backside. So by establishing your device hierarchy, right, you're able to make those decisions. And when we're talking about creating procedures, this needs to be a part of that. If this goes down and I actually know that there's a service that is mission critical behind it, I need to have my communication put together. I need to let the client know. If I am internal IT, I need to let my boss know and the people affected. That communication goes a long way because it's a lot better of a conversation to have than to sit back and say, oh, well, yeah, we know we're on it, or I'm not sure. I don't know what's going on, right? You don't want to be in that position. You don't want to be like, I'm trying to figure it out. Hang on. We should be using the tools to identify these and have that there. In your monitoring tools, you can apply a note. You can apply within when you're using your integrations. You can do a scripting to make sure, like, if something else is not down. You have so many opportunities to look at the way that you can report on things, how you can gather your statistics to know if something's going to be down. Use the information. You can even up down, right? That tells me something of which is coming across there. This is how you actually have those communications, is because when you go into any kind of a new onboarding with an NMS, you're seeing the topology, you're seeing how things are connected. That's one level, right? Like, we're showing you layer 2, layer 3, like, here's what's coming across here, here's your VLAN setup, here's this, here's what's going on. What is affected by these? This is a conversation you can have with your client. This is a conversation you have internal. You can make sure that all of your information is updated so that you actually know what is affected if something happens, because that's the vital criteria, right? If something goes down, that's not the first problem. There's either a person that was connected to that, or there's services, or there's other services that other people could be trying to access. You have to think of it that way. And I like to think of it hierarchical. I know that we have mesh and do things, but I like to just think of, like, if this goes down, who is affected and why? So that I can have a better reporting system and procedures in place to understand who I need to communicate with and how I can also let them know that we've resolved the problem, and then set up better proactivity. And that's part of your configuration of your alert suppression. Like, hey, like, I need to know if this is an actual problem before I alert everybody. And then I also need to make sure it's really clear before I actually say that it's not. Because I've been in that situation where I thought I fixed something, and I literally sent out an email like, hey, we're all good. And it was like, oh, it wasn't yet. And I was like, oh, I hate that recall, right? It's like, you can't hit it fast enough, and it doesn't work half the time. But it's one of those things that just kind of keeps you together. And then when you're looking at some of the alerts of which that come across there, as you remember, I said, like, let's look back on it weekly, at least, especially when you're getting started up and getting into things. How do they correlate to the downfall? What happened? What events were leading up to it? Let's look at the history. Oh, did you know that the CPU is spiking over here on these two servers that were connected to this service that was over here? Maybe that's something I need to pay attention to, so I can set up better alerting to proactively say, hey, these two are there, and the last time this is what happened. So let's monitor this and make sure if we know what the actual cause is. That allows you to have better monitoring. That allows you to have better conversations, right? And it allows you to keep up with your actual procedures. And then verify upstream issues. Like, if these are down, are we seeing anything above it? Like, is there other things of which that are happening that's coming across here? Is there anything that was giving me a warning sign? This allows you to find that mean time to resolution, but it also does that mean time to innocence that I always talk about, right? It's like, I need to cover my bases, but even if there is something that is at fault on me, right? I need to be able to correlate what was that so that I have a plan for how do I prevent this from happening again. So that's how that comes across. And then is everybody good on the stream? I seen something. Okay. Okay, cool. So Nicholas, I will go ahead and take this one. How do we correlate alerts and domos? Look at what it was actually alerted on. So if you have an alert that's went off and you're not sure if it was set up correctly, or you're trying to figure out how do I correlate that, that's when you look at that collector and you look at the device that it was attached to. Do you notice anything in your CPU, in your memory, in your storage? I'm not sure what alert you're necessarily talking about, but depending on the type of alert, you look at the history of that device, you look at the device details, and you start to see, was there a precursor that was happening here? Is there something that I should do? And to your point, like it, or not to your point, but when you're asking about correlation, oh, automatically. Yeah. So there is things that you can use because we have the API that we can actually float into something that like an observability that will actually put that together because it does machine learn patterning. So you can do that. You can also use ConnectWise, of which how it can go across there, some of our integrations, because you take that best of breed data so that you can actually correlate that at a higher scale in a learning language model type of a situation if you want to bring in AI. These are things that we are working towards, but we already have available today. So if you want to do the API backend, best of breed, and like pull that stream in, Splunk, things like that, absolutely. That's where you're going to get that more of a business dashboard of automatically seeing some of those problems that come across there. But you're still able to correlate events and be able to do that from any NMS tool today, of which that's out there. You just have to be aware of it, and then you have to look at the device and say, okay, now what was actually going on here, and can I see a spike? Can I see an anomaly because I have a baseline of what I knew it was supposed to be? Then I adjust my alerts, because a lot of times I see people where they're like waiting on the 80-90, and that's when they want to look at it when the problem is way before then. So you have to be ingrained in the fundamentals and actually starting to look at those. So when we're looking at the automation through integrations, kind of to your point, so Nicholas was bringing some of these up. This is when you're going to look at your PSA ticketings, because then you're able to do a holistic historical data of what's going on. How did it happen? What can I do to prevent it? Here's where you start your conversations to get some of those off, right? So when you have your PSA ticketing systems, that's how you do your remediation steps. That's how you can actually do some things of which that is there, and you can lean into some of that automation from like where Nicholas was actually going towards there. We also have the custom webhooks of which that you can use and use these in other tools. Like other tools do these. I'm not trying to like just say from here by any means, but these are how you use these. Yeah, Nicholas, I just had to wait for the next slide. I know you're ahead. This is perfect. So, but yeah, so when we use these ticketing systems, you're leaning into best of breed ticketing systems, right? So I've been with many different tools, and they all kind of have their niches, right, on kind of how alerting it and their own perspective of alerting should be. But when you lean into your integrations for tools that actually this is their life and they're in their best of breed type of a situation, you take advantage of their AI machine learning capabilities, and they look at it holistically and they have it like, oh, this is how we see these verticals. They do that, right? Like this is some of the things that you can really lean into. But you have to have the data from a network monitoring tool to be able to see that correctly. And you have to be able to massage that data to get that best streamline. If you're going to use the backend API webhook, if you're going to use a PSA ticketing just based off of alerting, you still have to make sure the content is correct. We're all well aware of AI and how AI works, and we also know how easily it is to manipulate, right? I mean, I can literally tell it that 2 + 2 is not 4, and eventually it'll agree with me and say it's 3. Not great, right? Because I gave it bad information. So with observability, and I have spoke about this many times with observability, and I actually wrote with O'Reilly's as well. When we're wanting to do observability, you want to make sure what you're feeding your tool is to the best of your knowledge to be accurate data. So I do not need it to know about an alert that is at an 80-90 when that is not the best of the data, when that device, say CPU, was at 30%, and now I'm only going to be streaming at something that says 80. There was a lot that could have happened between the 30 and 80, right? That I probably should have been aware about. I probably should have adjusted, and I could have seen something proactively. So you can have the best integrations. You can have the best observability tool ways of which that you can do. You can have the best logging tools that come in there. But if you are sending it noise, or if you're sending it things that are junk, right? Bad data, not accurate data for anomalies, it's not going to give you the observability that you think. Excuse me, it's not going to be able to give you a historical data track from your PSA ticketing. It's not going to be able to tailor those that information that you need for escalation procedures, because you're already escalated. You're already past the point of fixing an issue before it becomes something different. So this is some of those things. And then node red flows, like these are some of the things that I like, which is your remediation scripts. Like, are there things that we can do? For instance, if something changes, can I go download a config? If we know that, hey, I need to restart this service, can you go and restart that service for me? Like, there's different mini scriptings, there's different things and thresholds that you can set up, and you can do that without human intervention. What I will tell you in my experience is some people get really used to the Band-Aid quick fixes that come across, and they're like, I've been restarting this service. I can go on, and I have been talking with people, and I will look at this alert, which remediates itself, right? And I will look in their history, that's usually in a folder, right? And they've been doing that for 6 months. What do you mean you've been doing that for 6 months? There's a reason why you're doing this, right? This lets you know, hey, you can solve this problem, but I want to know, have you solved the fundamental issue? Because that problem that is consistent for 6 months could be leading to something more drastic that is going to hit you in the middle of the night and you're not prepared for, because you forgot about the problem because it's been remediated. So something that I like to do is, like, when we're doing remediation, is you have to come back and forth to it and reevaluate that. And why is it doing it? Is this a legacy that you don't have an alternative for? What's the plan? What's the alternative when you're going to get there? Is it because an iOS update is coming? When? Like, we need to have that documented. These are the conversations that you have to have internally with your teams, as well as client side if you're an MSP. Like, hey, we know there's a problem with this device. We're actually told you that we're going to upgrade that, and that's in your next fiscal year. We can do this for X amount of time until that fiscal year comes up, and we can actually provide the solution. But I need you to be aware, we got you right here for now, and this is what's happening. That's a much better conversation than, hey, guess what? We're a month out before the actual, we can buy the load balancing equipment of which that we need, and everything just went down and everything's gone, and I don't know what to do. We were restarting the service though for 6 months. I just didn't tell you that. Not a good conversation, right? Like, you want to have that conversation from the get-go so that they are aware that you have remediation in step. You are working for them and you're providing that to make sure that they are up and going, but you have the problem in sight, but you're all aware, so that as something comes down the line, right? And so some of the real world's like, a failure a router failure can go across. You can automate the ticket creation. You can actually have a knock notification that comes through there. You can do a 6 hours of manual work and eliminate it through an automation as well, right? So it's like, something goes down. What can I do? Is there anything that we can actually do that's automated that comes across here, right? You tools through integration to be able to do that, because you have plenty of options, no matter what you're using, to be able to lean into more automation workflows that can work for you. I mean, we know about playbooks, we know about things of which that we can do. We have these abilities that we can use to make the tools work for us. It doesn't have to be out of the box from a tool. Absolutely lean into your integration so that you're taking advantage of everything that you have. And you may already have some of these tools of which that are out there, and just be able to connect the dots. So some of the best practices is baseline network behavior. You don't know if you don't know what normal is, right? We've got to be able to define those anomalies before they become a critical issue of which that can come across there. Provide the contextual alerts. Make sure that they're understandable. Make sure they are actionable, that it comes across there. If they're informational, send them to informational so that you can actually do something about them. And don't just send informational to just be like, I'm there, whatever. At least look at them. If it's not monthly, quarterly, so that you can start defining. And then obviously, if you have a time frame of how long you're supposed to keep things, keep them for the bare minimum that you have. But at least look, is there something that is more coming up? Is there something that maybe you didn't know was even coming through there? Just because I say they're not actionable and need to go to the right things doesn't mean that you need to be aware of what's happening, even if it's informational. But you have to make a dedicated time for you and your team, or just somebody on your team, to look back and say what actually was happening. Are these some alerts of which that we can dive into, or is these some of the things that we can actually prolong and go in? Align with your user experience. What are they expecting? You know, like if they're teams, right? Like we have scripts for teams and to do stuff like, is it up? Is it down? Is it me? Like one of those. You can actually do that. Route analysis, things like that. You can use within your tools. Is there a pathway that is blocked for me after my ISP? That's huge. And I don't know if you guys knew that you guys could do that or not, but let me see if I can show this real quick. Screen. So as I will look here, I mean, when we're doing root analysis, when you go into your devices, I mean, this is something that I absolutely love. I know products do this, but I know that we do it as well. You can actually go out to your ISP and actually say like, hey, what's actually coming across? What's my hops? What is my loss? What is my packet loss? What is coming across here? They're trying to hit Teams. They're trying to hit Google. They're trying to go outside of here. You can use this route analysis within the tool so you can actually find out, is it you or is it not? Because if it goes outside of my router, it's not me. Well, that mean time to innocence, this allows you to have that conversation of it's not this network. It is past this point, or it's inside this network. It's actually on us, and there's things of which that we need to do. That's very vital. And then if I'm looking at my product and I'm wanting to come through here, what's the first thing that we all say on the network if something happens? What changed? Well, just very quickly, I can like look up at my switch and I can look at the latest events and be like, what changed? Is there a misalignment for my configuration? Is there a new change? Is it saved? Is it not? These are just tools of which that we can use that you quickly can look at and have your checkbox to say, oh, no, we're good. It's not me. Let's move on to the next layer of troubleshooting. So that's some of the stuff that we have there. All right, so back to here, just kind of side quest, right? But I just want to make sure you guys knew that, you know, the product has a lot of features and things of which that's in there. Most tools do, which that come across there, but how do you actually use them? And then continuous improvement. When we go back, like when I was saying in like 201, you've got to go back into your alerts. Because again, I don't want to be remediating something for 6 months. It should have a timeline. Like there should be an endpoint in sight. There should be something that's telling me that this is a solvable problem. And if it's not, who's working on it? We need to be able to look at that. I need to readjust my alerts. I need to go back through my alerts. If I had it set up at 35 as a warning because something was running at 30, is it 34 now? Is that okay with me? If it is 34, do I need to readjust or do I not? But I have to be able to look at this and be able to make those educated decisions because I'm continually improving my data points and I'm continually improving my alerting. I'm continually improving how the topology is looking. I'm understanding where those critical services are. And so we talked about the DART framework last time, but I wanted to get a little bit more advanced into it. So your discovery and everything of which it comes through there, it's the continuous improvement, right? So now let's think about the things that we discussed today. So I'm not going to go through each one of them because we did them on the last one, but how do we make this more advanced? Because now I'm looking at my integrations. I can use the same thing. I can discover what integration capabilities I have with my NMS tool today and what I actually have as other products here that I have internally that I can use. Can I connect them? Can I be able to use them? For alerting, do they have alerting abilities on their own? Do they have some way to extend the alerting of which that I feel that I need that's going to come across there? Are there remediations in the webhooks? Are there remediations in the PSA that can actually be taking place? I have to look at my integrations. I have to look more advanced, not just monitoring, but through the integrations of how we do this. And then troubleshooting. How am I correlating these? Is there something that I can do? Is there a root cause? Am I remediating for 6 months? No, I'm going to be able to have a solvable problem. I'm able to use the same DART framework that we did from the last time, but then apply that to the next step. So if it's not just foundational discovery, alerting, remediating, and troubleshooting, now I push it into integrations. What integration capabilities do I have? What alerting capabilities does this bring me? What remediation steps can I take outside of this? What better troubleshooting event correlations through integrations am I providing for myself as well as for my clients or internal IT? That is how you're able to do these things. And that's how we should continue the advancement of the DART framework. And so when we're looking at these, we already know that, the foundations one was improve the structure of how we're doing things, how we can be more proactive. The advanced build is how do we lean into those integrations? How do we use those tools to better supply ourselves so that we're not just firefighting? And so it's through the smarter alerting and escalation policies. Lean into those integrations. Lean into the on top of layering of basic foundations of actual monitoring, and leaning into those integrations and different points that we can expand it, right? And actually make it work for us. Understand your parent-child relationships. Get those internal procedures as well as those processes together. Look at the topology. Ask the right questions. What services are provided through here so that if something goes down, I am well aware of and I'm not told what could possibly be affected. You have to be able to rely into these and lean into that and actually understand those. Your automation through your integration, set up some remediations. To Nicholas's point, like, what else can I do? It's like, use those APIs on the backside. Start leaning into those tools that are present you with observability. You just have to make sure you're best of breed of what you're feeding them, so that they are working for you and not against you. Because again, you don't want to take something that's controlling, like a gatekeeper, for an observability platform and sending it too much data that it's not able to actually see the patterns and work correctly for you. Best of breed. Know that you're sending it accurate information. Know what information you are sending on the backside to it, so that it actually has a faster upkeep on its learning language model. It's able to help you quicker and not get distracted. And then best of practices. How do we get those baselines? How do you align with your user experience? You have to look at those SLAs. You have to be able to look at that information and correlate it with your internal processes, right? If a user is expecting an uptime for X amount of critical services, you better have those defined. You need to be able to define those and be able to accurately, if somebody was to contact you and there's a problem, know exactly what chain and devices those are affected in its whole tech stack. When you have a database server, it's not just that. Is the website server, is it loading? Is there any, GTMs, or is there any LTMs that are out there that is actually helping you to load balance these? Is there something that's going down on those? I need to be able to see this information so I can make accurate decisions, right? And this is how you move from that firefighting mode more into an automation driven IT, is because we start from the foundations, we start setting up our alerts and understanding where our baseline is. Now let's take it a step further. Let's lean into some scripting. Let's make sure we're getting all of our config backups. We're looking at the changes of the config backups. We're also leaning into our PSAs, our webhooks, our APIs that we can be driven on the backside, so that we can then go further and use the tools that you may already have or ones that you're already thinking about. Because when you get into observability again, you want to make sure that whatever information you're feeding, you want to make sure that it's accurate and you understand it. Because if you feed it information that you're not quite understanding at this moment, you're just going to escalate the situation when it's telling you there's a problem and you're like, but I didn't even know I was sending you that. Like, you have to understand what you're sending on the backside in statistics, metrics, and what your SLAs are, so that you can have a better business platform that can give you a better dashboard that's going to engage with that information. And you can adjust, right? Like, adjust your network monitoring systems, really understand them from a monitoring standpoint, so that when you're feeding anyone information, a report, looking at a dashboard, you have the answers if you're being questioned. And I think those are some of the vital things that we can do here. So this is the only one I went over. I went over 3 minutes on this one, but I know that you guys have questions. I love talking. This is my favorite part of it. So please, if you guys have questions you want to ask me, please ask away in the comments now, because if I don't have the answer, I guarantee you that I can find you the answer. I really want to make sure that we're providing as much information as possible for you. I've tried to give it from an MSP side as well as from an internal IT. So if you ask away, if there's anything of which that you guys are wanting to know. I did get a question on LinkedIn, which I thought was interesting. It was like, how do I actually know if I'm monitoring correctly with my alerts? So I will start with that one. So how do you know is because if you're getting an alert that you could take an action on and you look at the device and it was actionable, then yes, you're absolutely in the right spot. However, I've seen one where it was like, hey, like, I want to understand, is there a way that if I got an alert at 80% and I said, yes, I was firefighting it and I was able to solve this problem, right? Ask yourself the question, okay, but could you have prevented the problem if you would have known if it was at 60%? Because when I asked the question back to them, they're like, yeah, it was always at like 40%. But then I got the warning, right, that it was at 80%. And we were already seeing problems. We were already seeing some delays and some bottlenecks of which that was coming through. And I was like, wouldn't it have been cool if you would have actually seen that when it was getting the 50s instead of the 80s, so that you should have investigated the problem to actually know where the problem lied and prevented an outage. So these are how you know if your alerts are working. Are you able to go back and forth with them and actually create a report and say, hey, like, is this something that is a pattern, or is this something that's going to be further out that's going to come across there? All right, is there a way to create an RSS flux for the alert? I want to display it in Grafana. Yes, so you're able to send your alerts. You can do that from the webhook on the backside. If I remember right, does Grafana natively consume RSS feeds? I didn't think they did. I thought it was more like time series databasey type of a thing that came across there. Regardless, you can totally do a webhook. You should be able to do a middleware as well as to an RSS feed. So that should be able to go across there. But I would look into the Grafana because I know that they have a plugin that you can use, and maybe that's what you're talking about, like a Atom Panel, I believe. You can tell me if I'm wrong, Nicholas, but I think it was called Atom Panel that you can use that can actually put an RSS feed in there. But yes, you can use a webhook and you can use a middleware and be able to get to an RSS there. I have Domotes integrated to Halo, awesome, for tickets, and I have several devices per location. When the location ISP goes down, I get several tickets created. Is there a way to group locations into one ticket? So we were able to do that with the ConnectWise, and I believe you can now do that with Halo. Let me see here real quick. I can find out real quick because I don't want to leave you hanging on that. Halo Domotes group. Pretty sure. So I know ConnectWise, you're able to group them as a parent-child. And with Halo, I will check on that one to make sure specifically, because if we don't have it now, I'm pretty sure it would be coming out pretty soon because we're already working on those, because I know like Freshdesk and them do those too. Yes. So we just released it, looks like last Wednesday. That's why I was like, I think it's out now. I didn't want to say that. So yeah, Samuel, go ahead and get back in there. Or I'm sorry, Jim. Go ahead and get back in there because that was released last Wednesday for the Halo PSA. I was like, all right, thank you, Jace, because I was like, man, I'm pretty sure we hit that one. But if not, I knew it was coming out. So that's good. So Samuel, right now, our company IT MSP doesn't have a set of standard for guidelines for alerting from Domotes. What would be some guidelines to establish with my team so we don't overload the board with alerts for non-essentials? Absolutely. So what I would do is, so since your company is an IT MSP, what are you expected? Like what is your firefight, right? Like, is it an outage in a critical service? Is it an application in which it's coming across there? Is it that your devices start fundamentally? If your devices are in the wrong spot, or if your devices are not being monitored correctly, that's where you need to do that. So definitely look at your devices first. Layer 3 devices, right? They seem to be important. They have a brain that can do some stuff. But let's make sure that you understand your baselines for those devices. You're looking at the alerts of which that you're coming across there, and you're massaging those thresholds of which that can come in there. But what you need, and I like the way that you see that, what is some guidelines? What does your team do if XYZ happens, right? So is there a configuration change? What is that? Do they compare it to the startup? Do they can see who is actually making the change? What is coming across there? Was it a sanctioned change? Is it an actual change request that comes through there? These are the practices and the guidelines that you need to establish within your team. And you may already have some of these. You just need to put them with your NMS tool to prove that you're doing them, right? So was there a change on your network? Yes. Great. Let's do something about that. If we have a procedure, who did it? Was it actually one that was supposed to be done? Was it a maintenance? Was it not a maintenance? Those are things that you need to establish. If it's on your firewalls, for instance, if there was an increase in an uptick of CPU that's coming across, or memories going through the wall, what do they need to look at? Was there any change to the configuration? Is there any new bandwidth of which that was coming through there that now it's actually hitting a whole bunch of ACLs that it wasn't before? Look at that bandwidth. Are you actually starting to get to a buffer? Things like that. These are what you need to do, and to look at some of these as an example to be able to do those. I haven't tried it yet, but it wasn't the idea to give the. Oh, gotcha, Nicholas. Cool. Yeah, I'm pretty sure though. They have a plugin for the RSS feed, but I want to say that it was Adam. Like I said, that was a plugin. And you should definitely look into that. But regardless, I do know that they were able to use APIs too to come across there. So you might be able to use an API on the backside to be able to integrate that straight across with Grafana to come in there. Let's see. Help desk. Okay. Any synchro MSP integrations? Not that is on mine. I can let Jace if he wants to talk about that, if he knew of anything cool that was coming out there. But yeah, I'm not noticing. Oh, you're welcome, Samuel. I hope you like some of those, of which that would come across there. Also, when you guys are looking at guidelines and looking at some of your things to be set up, I've heard in the past couple of weeks people don't use the tools, their NMS tools, because of the distractions. So this is going to sound crazy, but what I usually tell people is, when you have your alerts that are out there, what alerts are out of the box for any tool that you're using, you're going to usually see them at 80, 90, right? Apply that to yourself so that you actually can see what is alerting, what is not. Get a baseline, right? Adjust the threshold so that you can see those. Once you're confident, or have a team member who is like, yeah, this is working, I'm not getting noise. Implement that with the team. Show the team then, hey, if this alert goes off, I'm expecting tier 1, or I'm expecting them to validate a config. I'm expecting them to validate interfaces. I'm expecting them to validate a service. Maybe you then need to start saying, okay, I'm going to actually build up more SNMP sensors or scripting to actually start following the tech stack of an application. Where's the database? Where's the website house? Is there load balancing in between it? What is the actual connection that's coming across there? What's the bandwidth? What are we doing that's coming across there? You create these procedures around a service outside of when you do your foundation. So I want you to make sure you're foundationally aware and you're alerting correctly so that you can see things, your thresholds are adjusted. But then I want you to look at what are the critical services? How can I monitor those critical services? And you can start engaging with those services from an application standpoint, a database standpoint, from the website, load balancing. You can create your procedures that are going to come through there so that you know what those are going to go across. What is the best way to get support? I used the email, but I didn't get a response. I am so sorry, Jim. Like, they're usually really spot on about that. I can get with you as well. If Jace, if you want to put that out there, let me grab the support. You should be able to get them. Let's see. If you want to give me, I don't know if you can private. If you want to email me, I will make sure that you have somebody that comes across there. So I'm putting my email address in here. I've done it at every one of them. If you guys have questions, concerns, you thought about this, you went through the program track and you want to get back in touch with me or anything, that is my email address. I'm also on LinkedIn. I've had several of you that's came out to me. Jim, please email me because that's very unusual. I will make sure that you get in contact. And then we can get that situated. That would come across there. So also so Jace put out there the synchrony PSA, of which it comes across there. So I know that there was a question earlier, just so that you understand that. Thanks, Evan. That's what I was saying. I was like, that kind of caught me off guard. I was like, let's do some of this. What are the best practices for customizing an automated domos reports for clients or management? Oh, there's so many different ways you can do that. So from the monitoring tables or the monitoring dashboards, you can do that client specific. If you're wanting to get into some of that information and then you're able to take that into a report, we have also reports of which that go out. Some of the things that I like to do, me personally, is I use Power BI. I've also used Tableau a lot because that's what I was taught to use is Tableau, and I can use the API hooks. I actually create some dashboards that are specific to my users so that they're able to see what's important to them. I want you to be careful. There is a thing called the green dashboard, right? That I have known my whole life where they're like, can you just make this green so my boss stays off my butt, right? Like, can we just make it all pretty and shiny? There is certain cases for that. Don't do that to your users because you want them to see that you are working and that you are actually improving and doing things within the environment for yourself. If it was for your boss, or even for your clients that come across there. Yeah, we have a native integration for the Power BI. I like Power BI. I'm more comfortable with Tableau, similar concepts of which it comes across there. But you can create the dashboards of which that you're wanting to relay. Hit your SLAs with them. You also want to be able that they can see holistically the environment that's going to be across there, right? Like those are some of the things that you're wanting to do and to provide them. Make sure you understand the KPIs that you want to represent and make sure you're confident in the KPIs that you're representing, because I've seen where people have had a client dashboard that is very broad and very specific to KPIs that they just apply to all of their clients. That can get very confusing if you have one client that's paying for maybe up down status awareness or some things in that nature, and then you have another one who's actually like more performance driven, because then at that point they have a lot of weird dashboards that they're looking at, right? Like, the one that wasn't, some people think it's a sell up tool because it's like, look what you could be having. But a lot of times it causes a lot of confusion and they want to know why they're not getting that. Or maybe they didn't get it explained to them. So when you're doing any of your Power BI dashboards and stuff, make sure that they are for the client in a way that they are going to understand, and have a conversation with them about what you're providing them, instead of just here's your dashboard and move on. Because just like we have to onboard to NMS, your clients need to be onboarded to you. And the more information you give them, the more they're going to trust you and the information from that point on. So, I mean, that's just one of my things. I know a lot of people just provide a dashboard sometimes, and then you'll see them on Reddit asking questions about their MSP's dashboard. So it's like, don't make them get answers from other people. Is there an API endpoint concentrating all alerts in the devices and all collectors? Don't see it in documentation. So you're able to gather the API alert information that's from the backside. Let me get that for you, Nicholas. Email me and I will be able to sync with you so that I can make sure that you're getting the right info so you can see all the collector. Because I mean, you're literally able to see into the database to come across there and pull that information. And I can point you to that. So please make sure you email me and I will get that information. All right. I hope you guys have had a good time with me. I know this is like the last of this series, but don't worry. We also have a series, me and Jace, because Jace is awesome, that we're thinking about probably in Q4. That's going to be on the management side of it, and it'll be more demo centric of actually being within the product and kind of diving in there. So look for that. Please pay attention to our release notes. Our engineers have been working so hard this year, and a lot of stuff is coming to fruition. And I think that you guys are going to be excited in the next couple of months. So we have our release notes of which that is out there that we get updated. Pay attention to your product if you're in product, because you're going to come in on Thursday and be like, what? This is crazy, right? Like there's a lot of fantastic fundamental work that has been done here. And I'm just super excited. Yeah, so we do them once a month on the notes, just so that you know the August one should be coming out. If they're not already, Jason would be able to provide that one, because that's the one that has the topology and everything that's within there. But I hope you notice that we're tracking with you in some of the solutions that you guys have been asking for. Engineering as well as the PMs here have been really listening in on some of the beta programs, as well as like talking with you guys through email and set up phone conversations. We've had a lot of those, and we appreciate that greatly. That's how we get better. That's how we know we're meeting you where you're at. So please continue those. If you ever have a question, or if you're like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if Domos did this? Email me. Maybe we're working on it. Maybe there's a beta, maybe there's not, but maybe there's one that's coming and I can get you included in it. Maybe I just want to have a conversation with you, and let's just build something fun in our heads so that we can actually relay that and maybe prototype some stuff up. I love doing that with you guys too. And so that we can actually relay that information so that engineering and everybody is on the same page. So again, thank you all so much for everything that you guys have been here for with me. And again, please make sure that you email me out, or if there's any questions that you have. And thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.